Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Millionaire Real Estate Agent Podcast. I'm Jason Abrams, and this is the place where we lift the curtain on the world of real estate like never before. Every week, I sit down with visionaries, pirates, and mavericks. We're here to document, demonstrate, and most importantly, demystify their game-changing models and systems. What secrets propel them to the top? And how are they living their dreams? This is about passion, it's about strategy, but above all, it's about real, tangible success. So buckle up and let's dive in. This is the Millionaire Real Estate Agent Podcast. I want to give you a simple truth about life. Friends, when you stop trying to control things that aren't yours to control, you stop wasting your energy, you reclaim your time, your peace of mind, and your focus. You realize that your happiness is tied to your actions, not someone else's behavior, opinions, or moods. Write it down, friends. That's from a book called The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins. Now, if you don't know who Mel is, she is the author of The 5-Second Rule and The High Five Habit. She hosts one of the largest, if not the largest, podcasts in the entire world. And her book, The Let Them Theory, has been one of the most successful nonfiction book launches in history. How do you top that? Enter Gary Keller. Friends, we caught up with Mel and we talked all about her book. We then took that conversation and we are bringing Gary Keller into it. This is a man who needs no introduction. He wrote the book, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, with Jay Papasan and Dave Jenks. May he rest in peace. The namesake for this program. Friends, he has insights and he is going to share them. We got with Mel and we got with Gary. This show is going to go back and forth in a dual piano style where one plays and then the other one does, and we're going to unpack life's biggest questions and most important conversations. Sit back and buckle up. This is Mel Robbins and Gary Keller. Mel, thank you so much for doing this. We're so grateful.
Happy to talk to you.
I fell in love with the book. I think it's so fantastic, and I can't wait to talk about it. In the book, on page 18, you say, what is the Let Them Theory? You say the Let Them Theory is about freedom. 2 words, let them, will free you from the burden of trying to manage other people. When you stop obsessing over what other people think, say, or do, you finally have the energy to focus on your life. You stop reacting and start living. You go on to say, here's how it works. When you stop trying to control things that aren't yours to control, you stop wasting your energy. You reclaim your time, your peace of mind, and your focus. You realize that your happiness is tied to your actions, not somebody else's behavior, opinions, or mood. Mel, I've read that 30, 40 times. That knocks my socks off.
Why does it knock your socks off?
I think that's so simplistically profound. The depth of which you covered in 2 paragraphs there cuts all the way to the essence of why you actually own the way that you feel on a daily basis. Did I get that right?
You did. You know, I think it's kind of one of these things where we're all so caught up in what other people are doing, or our fears about the economy, or what's going on in the headlines, or what's going to happen with mortgages or interest rates or the housing stock, all of which, by the way, is beyond your control. And yet we are so outwardly focused that what we don't realize is the thing that I'm pointing out to you in this book over and over and over again, which is if you're so busy thinking about, worrying about, fretting about what's happening on the outside, you're burning through all of your time and energy, and you actually miss the single most important thing about life, which is your power is all on the inside. It's what you think, it's what you do or don't do, and it's how you respond to the things that you feel. And so there are so many of us right now, and if I think about real estate in particular, where, okay, what's going to happen with the economy? What's going to happen with interest rates? Blah, 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 blah. Nobody can control any of that. But what you can control is whether or not you're doing the basics that we know have been true about real estate since the beginning of real estate, which is it's a relationship business. It's a business about meeting people and talking about your business and putting out your social media. And no matter how bad the housing stock is or how good it is, and no matter what the interest rates are or they aren't, people are still going to be buying and selling houses and property, and that's not going to change. And if you burn through time and energy worrying about interest rates and getting yourself all consumed, you are now wasting time that you could be spending doing the things that are in your control, marketing your business, working on social media, making relationships, asking for referrals. Like all of that's in your control, no matter what's happening with interest rates. But we allow the outside world to paralyze us. And, to put it very simply, you cannot take control of your own life and business until you stop trying to control everyone and everything around you. And, another simple way to say this is people don't often think that in order to, for example, get sober, you have to first stop drinking. In order to take responsibility for your business and your life, you have to stop assuming responsibility for everybody else's. And responsibility, let's just look at that word. It's just the ability to respond. Your power is not in thinking about or worrying about mortgage rates. Your power is in responding to the mortgage rates today, and then responding to the mortgage rates tomorrow. When you realize you do have the power to focus on your response to things, now you're going to start to realize you have more control even when the world feels like it's out of control.
This idea of control, you mentioned it. In the book, you actually say it's a fundamental law of human nature that all human beings have a hardwired need for control. You have this epiphany, and then you pour all your energy into the one thing you can control, which is me. Why do you think it's so natural for us to walk around every day and try to control everything else?
Well, it's a great question. And, it was in talking to people in this book. I mean, there's 18 pages at the end of this book of academic citations. Like I've talked to, anytime we would have on the Mel Robbins podcast, some world-renowned neuroscientist or, psychologist or psychiatrist or relationship expert come on, I would make sure to interview them also about the let them theory. And what came up over and over, and it's kind of what you hear, it's kind of one of those things where you're like, well, that's obvious. Why didn't I think of that before? We have a hardwired need to be in control. So for example, you have a hardwired need in your brain, in your body, in your nervous system to feel as if you're in control of your decisions, to feel as if you're in control of what you're eating, what you're going to do tonight, what's going to happen in your career, what's happening in your bank account. Because when you feel in control, you feel calm and safe. You feel good. Now here comes the problem. The problem is that if another person does something that worries you or annoys you or stresses you out, guess what? Their behavior now makes you feel, because you're worried or you're pissed off or you're frustrated, their behavior makes you feel out of control. And here's the mistake I made for the first 54 years of my life. Whenever somebody's behavior kind of triggered my feelings of stress, I made a mistake. I would cross a line and I would try to control the other person. I would try to change their behavior. I would try to tell them what to do. I would try to tell them I'd wish they would change. But herein lies the problem. Every human being has the same need for control. So when you start bossing your client around and pushing them around and trying to pressure them, you're not motivating them to close a deal. You're actually bumping up against their need to be in control of themselves and their decisions. So you don't motivate somebody to change. You just created resistance to somebody doing what you wanted them to do. And when you start to realize, oh my God, my kids have a need to feel in control. This is why most pediatricians will tell you, if you're having problems with your kids where you're like, okay, it's time to go, get your shoes on. They're throwing themselves down on the floor and throwing a temper tantrum because they don't want to be told, they want to keep playing because they want to be in control of what they're doing. If you say, get your shoes on, they're just going to resist. But if you say, hey, do you want to put the right or the left one on? By giving them a choice, you now are just playing into this need to have control. Oh, I'll do the right one because I get to choose. And so there are subtle things that I learned that are actually quite powerful from the world's leading neuroscientists that help you influence behavior without making the mistake of trying to control someone else's behavior, which is always going to backfire. When you have a simple concept, saying let them, which is when you recognize I can't control this long line or this traffic, I can't control the interest rates, so I'm going to let the Fed do what they're going to do. I can't control what this client is going to do in terms of when they're going to close on this deal or not, so I got to let them take their time, and maybe they're going to blow up the deal. When you say let them, you're actually drawing a boundary between you and the rest of the world, and you're also detaching from this situation or this person because you recognize I can't control this, therefore it's not worth my time and energy. When you say let me, you now redirect your time and energy back at the three things you can control, which is what do I think about this, what am I going to do or not do, and what am I going to do with how I feel about what's happening.
Okay, Gary.
Yes.
Mel just explained to us that people spend an inordinate amount of time trying to be in control.
I know, it's true.
They try to control others. They try to control outcomes. They're pre-focused with this. And that's not only stressful, but in some ways it's a lot of wasted energy. Yeah. How do you think about the word control?
It's interesting. I think somehow we're pre-programmed or predestined to the concept of shortcuts. And control, I think, if you analyze it, if you and I closed our eyes and hummed a chant, I think we would realize that control is what we mistakenly believe is the fastest path to getting where we want to go. And I think that's kind of how that shows up in life versus the opposite of that, influence.
So as you've went through your life, and both personal and business, looking back, what are the things that you actually do need to be in control of?
Yeah, well, you learn the hard way. If you're trying to live your best life by doing the things that matter most to you, the very best that you can, you'll quickly discover that control is a fantasy, that it's not going to get you where you want to go. Influence is the only way to get there. The word control applies to you, and it really only applies to you, because the only thing that you can actually control is the way you think, the words you say, and the actions that you take. That's all you can control. Right. And then overarching above that is you can control how you use your time to think, say, and do.
It's such a big idea because when I'm not purposeful about controlling what I think or the things I say, which, by the way, I'm thinking all the time and I'm speaking all the time, that sounds very regimented to try to live like that.
Do you? You mean to be a controller?
Well, by the way, controlling oneself could be a full-time job.
It's the only job you have. You were born to get the best out of the life that you've been given for however long it is. And so you taking control of your life, the purpose that you give it, that translates into the values and beliefs that you hold, that ultimately turns into the way you see your life going. That's all the thinking. And then using the words to reinforce and taking the actions necessary to move along the path you want is what we call life. And if you're in the real estate business, it's really simple. You can control your time. And there's this thing called the 80-20 principle, and it's about time. And that is 20% of what you do will create 80% of your success.
So if I'm a real estate agent, what's the most important thing while I'm at work that I do with my time?
Sure, a couple of hours of lead generation. So real estate is a contact sport. And if you don't like to make contact with people, you should get a desk job in front of a computer. If you're in the real estate business, you're in the people business. You're in the people problem-solving business. And that means we have to make contact. I can take an agent who's brilliant and doesn't spend any time in lead generation, and I can take an agent that's not brilliant, has all kind of phobias, all kind of issues and challenges, but they methodically every day give a few hours to purposefully making contact with people in whatever ways that they can. They will, over time, way outproduce the other person. So in the real estate space, you see people come in who are highly sociable and have some aggression and grit, and they hit the ground running. And that's the person that their first 90 days or first 180 days had all kind of records. Okay, that's possible. But I did that, and I'm not sociable. I did that and was the runner-up to the Rookie of the Year my first year in the business in the largest firm in the city, and I'm not sociable, and I don't really like to make a lot of contact. I mean, that's my natural behavior. Now, at almost 68 years old, I've learned to turn my love of people into a more loving style and more gregarious style. But my natural behavior was not to do that. But I had to overcome that if I was going to be successful in real estate. I look up and I said, I got a problem. I don't naturally want to do what the industry requires to be successful. So I have to find my path to make my contacts so that in the end, I can be successful. I'll tell you something. You don't build the world's largest real estate sales organization by luck under one brand. You don't do it by luck. But I'll tell you something else. You don't do it by being the smartest either. And you don't do it by being the most charming. You only do it one way. Controlling your time and focusing on what matters most. And you know that no one can ever take that away from you.
Friends, if you're listening today and you haven't listened to Adam Hamadat's episode, Adam laid out how he changed his whole life by running ads on social media. And we put that episode out there and we were inundated, Mel, with people saying, I look stupid. I'm not good on video. I don't know what to say. I wouldn't know what to wear. I hate the way my voice sounds. We got all these emails back. And in chapter 5, you say, let them think bad thoughts about you. You have no idea how big of a problem this is. Neither did I. It's easy to put on a facade that you don't care what other people think, but the reality is we all do. Mel, in a day and age where real estate agents need to be out there, where the people are on social media, unpack this idea.
This is going to change your real estate business. First of all, your social media is not for your friends from high school or your former sorority sisters or even your family. Your social media, if you're serious about your business, is a marketing channel. That's what it is. And so if you do not learn how to use the let them theory to be comfortable letting people think whatever they want about you, letting people judge your voice, letting people roll their eyes, letting people have their opinions and their gossip, letting them think something negative, letting them criticize the sweater you're wearing, letting them think that your videos of the open houses are stupid. Let them. And the reason why you need to learn to let them is because it is physically impossible for you to crawl up inside anybody's head and actually manipulate what they think about you. Nothing that you do will guarantee that someone actually thinks something positive or negative about you. And that's what I mean about this is one of the biggest obstacles. And the fact that so many of you are willing to write in and be like, I couldn't run ads, I couldn't do this. Well, the only reasons why you aren't is because you're stopping to think about what someone else might think if you do it. And so before you even run the ad or shoot the video, you are already stopping yourself because you are giving power to somebody else's thoughts. And when I tell you something, if you don't have the results that you want in your life, if you're tired, if you're overwhelmed, if you constantly feel yourself putting off the little things that you need to do, or you're just not as happy as you'd like to be, the problem isn't you. The problem is all this power you've given to other people. You're so worried and value what everybody's opinion is of you that you're not doing what you need to do in order to grow your business and change your life. And when you don't do what you need to do to grow your business or change your life, guess whose opinion of you really sucks? Your own. Because you know every single day you are quietly, deliberately quitting on yourself because you've given all this power to strangers' opinions. And there's a different way to go about life. Let them think something negative. That's exactly what you're going to say. You have to learn how to turn that camera on. You have to learn how to hit post, even when your body feels like, ick, I can't do this. Say, let them. And what's going to happen is all those people that you're jealous of in the real estate business who are out there putting themselves out there, that you're comparing yourself to, all of a sudden, the more you hit post, the more you say, let them, and then you say, let me remind myself, my business is my responsibility. Let me remind myself, if I want to be serious about making the money I want to make, I got to prove it to myself by doing the things that I don't feel like doing. Let me hit post. Let me change my social strategy. Let me do some things that are uncomfortable. The more that you do that, what's fascinating is that the more times you take an action that's aligned with what you actually do value, and the goals that you have for yourself, a couple things happen. Number one, you're kind of proud of yourself. You see yourself doing it. And number two, because you're now waking up every day and you're doing a simple thing that aligns with who you want to become and the kind of goals that you have for your life, really funny thing. You don't actually think much about what other people are doing at all because you've put the value in what you're doing. I know I can't control what strangers on the internet say, but I can control how I show up. I can control whether or not I spend time worrying about it. I know the truth about me. I know my intention. And when you know the truth about you, you can let people say whatever the heck they want because you can't control it anyway.
She makes an argument that if people are going to talk ill about you, just let them. If people are going to run their play instead of worrying about it, just let them. She makes the argument that everyone's going to do what they're going to do, but no one can stop you from doing what you're going to do. How do you think about that?
Well, she's spot on. I love the way she thinks, by the way. I'm a big fan. And that is 100% correct. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what others think and what others say. It doesn't. They're going to think and say and do what they're going to do. And if you're sitting here trying to be responsive to that, you're always behind the eight ball. If your whole goal is nothing but to respond to how other people are doing things, you're always a day late and a dollar short. You have to get in front of that. And the only way you get in front of it is not worrying about it. I promise you, at the level that I have to live my life, probably every minute of every day, someone curses my name.
I never thought of it that way.
Oh, I promise you. And they could be a competitor. They could be somebody in my own organization. But all my competitors, all of our competitors wake up every day to try to unseat us. If we try to fall victim to that kind of conversations and those actions, then we're in big trouble. But if we wake up every day and say, this is who we want to be, we spend our time and effort on becoming the best at that, then nobody can touch us.
This idea of focusing inward on running your play every day, as opposed to reacting to what everybody else is doing every day, feels like a much more scalable way to live a life.
It is. It is. It absolutely is the only way to live your best life possible, is to live your life.
Mel makes the argument that if you're a real estate agent and you're not using social media, you're making a mistake.
Yes.
And she says that people make that mistake kind of unwittingly in a form of protection because they're ultimately afraid of being judged.
And Mel says it well, and that is people, and it's not just about social media, is that we all have fear, and we actually have an unhealthy relationship with fear. We don't really understand it, but we let it drive our life without us understanding it. We never confronted it or really thought about it. All we did was run from it and avoid it, thinking that's how you deal with fear. That's not how you deal with fear. I mean, there's two types of fear. There's irrational and there's rational. In the real estate industry, the way this shows up is real estate is a contact sport. And so there are a lot of people that have an irrational fear of looking bad, making mistakes that can harm someone, doing things that will harm them in some way. And so they have this whole list of, I would say, phobias that they have no evidence that A, they will do that, or B, even if they do, that it has a negative consequence. In fact, I think the research on social media says it's kind of irrelevant. If you bring value in whatever form you bring it, that you will find your audience.
Okay, so I understand rational and irrational fears. What do I do now?
If you want an honest answer, the phrase, well, just do it and get over it, is great advice for fearless people. But when you tell a fearful person, well, just get over it and do it, they've checked out on you. They look at you and go, you don't understand me and you're not listening. I'm afraid. I can't do this, right? So when you ask the question, so, okay, I've got some fears about doing some of it, my response is take a second and ask yourself, who or what group can I go hang out with that will help me in a safe environment deal with this? At a personal level, they actually call it therapy. and you actually go and sit down with someone in a private room who you're going to say whatever you want and it's not leaving the room, and you're going to deal with your issues. That's why you would go there. It's a great place to go. I've been. When you have emotional issues to work out, the right therapist will absolutely, in fact, it changed my life. To be honest with you, therapy did. So my point is that therapy's been around forever and people seem to think of it as a taboo. And I'm not recommending that everyone listening immediately goes to a therapist. By the way, it would help you, but I'm not recommending that. But I am saying that if you're in a real estate business, there are people around you. And the way I overcame it was there was a gentleman named Tim, and we were both out of college and had just gotten real estate. And we would meet every morning at 7 a.m. And we would go into a conference room, and I can still see that in my mind. One of us would start with the phrase, "Why don't you buy it?" And the other one had to say, "No." And that started the conversation.
Well, so by the time you got done, by 7:30 in the morning, you had just went through one of the most difficult conversations that you were going to have during the day. Everything else must have felt easy.
Yeah, it was, because yes, by doing that for almost 6 months, I went from being fearful and insecure about it to being very comfortable that if I look stupid, I'll apologize. If I make a mistake, I'll fix it. If I don't know the answer, I'll go get the answer. And those were all my phobias. And I thought that as a professional, I had to know everything. The scariest person on the planet is the person that wakes up and believes that their professional job is to know all the answers. The reason you're a professional is because you've been hired to give the right answer, the best answer. Whether it comes out of your brain or someone else's is irrelevant to the person that's asking you to help them. Because what you think in this industry when you get started is you need to have all the answers. No, you don't. You need to show up as a servant. And if you recognize that you're there to serve and that knowing all the answers and being a Swiss Army knife for the consumer is your job, you're a fool.
By the way, the idea of rational and irrational fears.
Yes.
And then getting with a group of people that help you put your toe in the water to get past the thing that's stopping you is simple and brilliant.
Here's the issue. You will not solve your fear alone. This idea that you're going to read a book and it's going to solve your fears, maybe, but the odds are no. I don't believe that the book or the tape, there's no speech I can give you that will solve that problem for you. And it doesn't matter if I'm the greatest motivational speaker or inspirational speakers or whatever, or trainers, that's not going to work. What's going to work is putting me in a safe place where I can address my fears, talk about it, and then experiment and practice doing whatever it is that I'm afraid of, and then building a new understanding that I didn't die, no one else died, I wasn't harmed, they weren't harmed, that nothing bad happened. And by the way, then you'll go back to your social media and you won't care anymore. You'll just post the best you can post, and here you go.
You know, I'm thinking back to when I got into the real estate business, and I'm thinking about my whole journey. Having a physical location to go to, filled with other people who were doing the same thing I was. I didn't realize it at the time, but this was an environment for exactly what you're describing.
Yes. Yeah. You can't replace that, to be honest with you. You can't. When we talk about this issue of rational and irrational fear and this whole idea of social media really matters, but I'm afraid to do it for all these reasons, telling you, get over it, buck up, do it anyway, just jump in. That's great. But that only works for the individual that didn't have the problem to begin with. Go to a safe place and practice. Just practice and watch what happens.
You then start to talk about relationships. And the other one that I'd love for you to unpack, this idea that adults can still behave a lot like children. And the minute you recognize it, all of a sudden you feel completely different about the behaviors. And I'm going to give you a couple from the book. In the book, you build this chart, which I have now hanging on my wall. And it says, on one side, we have child behavior. On the other side, we have adult behavior. Child behavior. Children run away from you. Adults avoid confrontation. Children sulk or pout in the corner. Adults give the silent treatment. Children shut down. Adults act stoic. Children throw tantrums. Adults erupt and rage, text, and vent. Children slam doors, and so do adults. Children lie. Adults do too. And I looked up, Mel. I had never thought about it before. But it's possible that you grow in age, but still maintain a lot of the same behaviors you did when you were a kid.
Well, I'm sure as the person's listening to this, you're thinking about clients who are passive aggressive, who rage text, because, real estate's a very emotional thing, and especially a residential transaction. And so here's the rule of thumb. I want you from this point forward to look at every single person that you meet as an 8-year-old inside a big body. Because when you are dealing with somebody who rage texts, or you're dealing with another broker on another side of a deal who's really passive aggressive or just immature, or like all of a sudden ghosts you on something, you're not dealing with a mature adult. You're dealing with somebody that is engaging in childlike emotional behavior because they can't handle their own emotions. And when you say that to yourself, I've got to let them throw a tantrum, let them rage test, because I can't stop it. And it's not my job to parent another adult. But even though I said it's not your job to parent someone else and you got to let them, I didn't say you have to take it. See, what we do now is we allow this kind of stuff because we don't call it out. So you're going to say, let them send a rage text, right? Or let them be passive aggressive because it already happened. But then what you're going to do is you're going to say, let me remind myself how much time and energy I give to somebody, and whether or not I do business with somebody is my choice. And so instead of wishing somebody would change, don't wait for someone else to change. You're the one that's going to change. Because, one thing that my kids started to say to me that really helps a lot is that you say to somebody, look, I can see that work is stressing you out. Sorry that, this whole real estate transaction is stressing you out, but you're going to need to apologize to me for how your stress is now impacting me. Because it's not cool that you're talking to me like this. And in fact, if you're going to keep your tone of voice like that, I'm going to hang up the phone and you can call me later. That's how you stay on your side of the fence, and you basically acknowledge, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I'm going to tell you this doesn't work for me. Or you just decide, I just am not going to respond when this person is like this. And now you've protected your time and energy.
I took the advice in the book literally, and I was sitting in a meeting the other day, and someone was having, I'm not going to say which behavior because I don't know who we're talking about, but one of these behaviors showed up, and I did the thing where you picture them as a fourth grader. I felt great for the rest of the day, just so you know.
Great. It works because you don't feel like you're looking down on somebody. You actually, because I think we are all afraid of the person that has that challenging emotional state. But the truth is, if you look at them like, oh my gosh, there's a little 8-year-old, they're just throwing a little tantrum, poor thing. It's like you feel compassion for somebody and you just stay away from it instead of engaging in it.
That's 100% right. I have one last question. You decided later in the book to cover, as if you didn't cover enough, you're like, I might as well cover the secret of love while I'm at it. I thought that was a very brave choice. And so Gary Keller just wrote the 10 truths for bold. And the last one is, in life and business, love is always the answer. I didn't think it was any surprise that you sort of ended your book the same way on such a profound topic. In a minute or two, what can you teach us about love?
So love is not as complicated as I think we all think it is. Love, to me, based on the research and really digging into it with some really amazing experts in this book, is it's just admiration for some aspect of a human being and consideration, having someone in mind. If you make a cup of coffee with almond milk for somebody because they like almond milk, that's an act of love. And you have them in mind. And there's something about this person that you admire so that you're actually doing something to take care of them. And so when you really boil it down that way, one of the things that the let them theory taught me is that the most loving thing that you can do with somebody is love them as they are versus wishing they were different. And that's a very hard thing to do because I think the people that we love the most are the ones that we try to change the most. And so when you start saying, let them, let your mom be who she is, let your kids be who they are, let them. You're having to see people as they are, maybe even for the first time. And then ask yourself, like, how can I show up and choose this person as they are without trying to change them. And when somebody feels that you truly do love them, what they feel is acceptance. What they feel is considered. And I've spent too long loving the people in my life by wishing they were different or trying to make them better or hinting at how, and we're all going to continue to do that to a certain extent. But I think the more that you say let them, the more you are cueing to yourself, this person is a whole human being as they are. And if I can learn to accept and love and consider and admire something in them as they are, I've just opened up the space for true connection. And it's just such an extraordinary and simple and profound thing.
Mel says at the end of her book, she says, everything I just talked about is great, but here's the key to life: love. And she closes on it. You have just penned the 10 bold truths, and the last one is love is always the answer.
Yes.
I find it fascinating that you both end on that same idea.
Well, it's not our idea.
Well, that's why I want to ask.
Okay.
So what is the big idea? Why is love always the answer?
There's a couple of ways we can have this conversation. The way my mind works is if you go study the 7 great religions, they have a couple of things in common, Jason. And one of them is the word love. And by the way, it's not self-love. It's not self-love. Self-love, in many ways, is assumed in spiritual writings. It's presumed and assumed in many cases. What they're all talking about is the love of others. And they put the love of others at the highest form of purpose in life, which is really fascinating, right? The way I think about it is, so that to me is kind of a foundational way I think about it. If the people that have lived before me from the beginning of time have created these spiritual practices and every one of them have come to this conclusion, I should at least examine that before I just write it off and go, well, what do they know? I'm a modern man. I'll use my own big brain. And, no, people who lived before you, you should understand what they thought to build your thoughts off of that, right? The thing for me is that I'm very clear that people matter more than anything else. And if people matter more than anything else, you can live your best life by helping others get what they want. Because at the end of the day, any product or service, anything that you're out there to provide to others is solving a problem for them. Mm-hmm. If you put them first and your business practices or your personal life is built around helping them solve that problem, you're actually living your best life. Look,
it seems so counterintuitive.
Well, as a sidebar, my big aha in my marriage was that if I put my wife first, I get everything I want. If I wake up every day and my only goal is to make Mary as happy and as healthy as she could possibly be, and that we're having our best life, she is having her best life, I get my best life. And it's the craziest thing. It's all counterintuitive. If I help my dog have its best life, I'm having my best life with my dog. If I help my kid have their best life, I'm having my best life possible with my kid. So the selflessness is counterintuitive because we certainly live in a society of me, look at me, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I had the opportunity to sit down with 2 gentlemen, they're pretty amazing, and they control 50% of their market above 10 million. It's either number 1 or 2 most wealthiest zip codes in America. That's a lot of business, by the way.
Yes.
By the way, their pictures appear on nothing. It appears on nothing.
It's not about them.
No, it's not on their signs. It's not on anything. And when you visit with them, they go right to this. Why would we do that? Our business is not about us. We're not selling us. We're there to help people buy homes and sell homes. Why would we promote ourselves? No, we want to promote our success in the way that we go about helping people succeed at what they want. One last comment, and that is, the word love has natural connotations, typically around either romantic love / family love. So typically the word love, I believe for most of us, we were raised to use that word around the family and or around an individual or individuals that we care deeply about. If you look at the pyramid of words to describe how you feel about people, go look at it. Go look at the synonyms I have. and they're all inadequate. There's a point in a relationship. And by the way, with your friends, acquaintances, all kind of relationships, that at some point, the only word that's actually adequate is that word love. And it seems a little odd, but I've caught myself where I've been with an individual, and at the end of it, I'll say, love you. Or I'll put a heart emoji on it, and I'm going, hold it. That heart emoji or that phrase is reserved for a very select group of people. That's an inner circle that is very crucial to my life. And I've discovered in my journey that, yes, that's all true, but except that word also ends up describing other relationships too, because there's no better word. And then at some point you wake up, or at least I did, and realized that the love of humanity itself is the overarching goal of the 7 great religions. What they're trying to get us to understand is we're all in this together. In this thing of not caring about others and only caring about yourself is the most destructive concept ever invented.
Wow.
It is. It is. And again, my life is, I've tried to build a life in the service of others, and it was an experiment to see if I did that, can I still have a big life? And the answer is, yes, you can.
Yeah, maybe the biggest life.
You can have the biggest life that you can possibly have.
What could I say? How would I tie that all together and put it in a neat bow for you? I'm not even going to try to do that. I just want to ask you one question. Are you willing to let them? That's really the question. You see, you're not going to stop people from having negative thoughts about you. Hell, you're not even going to stop yourself from having negative thoughts. But are you willing to just let them and move along with your life? Friends, in the end, from what I've learned from these 2 giant thinkers, it doesn't matter what other people are going to do as long as you do the things that you need to do. I want you to sit back and just imagine for a moment that you got to live the rest of your life with the sort of freedom that you hear in Mel Robbins' voice, with the sort of clarity that you hear in Gary Keller's voice. And I want to tell you, you can have both right now. This is about making a conscious choice to move forward with the life that you deserve, not the one that you have. And here's what I want to tell you, friends. The key to life, from what I can tell so far up to this point in it, is everybody gets what they deserve based on the actions that they take. Mel and Gary are saying the same thing, that anything that's stopping you from having the life you want is 100% in your control. Friends, this is the moment to all join arms in living bigger lives together. That's the thing about being in this community. Go forth and do likewise. There it is. That wraps another episode. Friends, I don't know what you're taking out of this. I really don't. I'll tell you what I want you to be taking out of it, which is these are the people that are having tremendously big lives. And the reason it's happening is because they're setting up the models and systems to do just that. Gary Keller told me that leadership is teaching people how to think so that they do the things they need to do when they need to do them, so that ultimately they get the things they want when they want to have them. And that's what I want for you. You're all leaders, but it begins with leading ourselves. If you're enjoying this podcast, I want you to click the subscribe button anywhere that you get your podcasts. We want to be the voice in your head every single week, and every week we're dropping new content. We also send out a newsletter at the conclusion of every show to make sure that you get the highest points in the models and systems that were discussed. So if you want to sign up, I need your name and your email address. Head over to the millionaireagentpodcast.com. millionaireagentpodcast.com. Enter your name and your email address, and every week that newsletter will be in your box. Friends, you just went on a journey. I hope that what happens between now and the next time we meet is absolutely wonderful for you. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week.
This podcast is for general informational purposes only. The views, thoughts, and opinions of the guest represent those of the guest and not Keller Williams Realty LLC and its affiliates, and should not be construed as financial, economic, legal, tax, or other advice. This podcast is provided without any warranty or guarantee of its accuracy, completeness, timeliness, or results from using the information. Warning: you must comply with the TCPA and any other federal, state, or local laws, including for B2B calls and texts. Never call or text a number on any do not call list, and do not use an auto dialer or artificial voice or pre-recorded messages without proper consent. Contact your attorney to ensure your compliance.